We usually look at Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion and Keldeo as the Swords of Justice, the legendary protectors of the Unova region. But I don't think we see the whole picture here, because when we take a closer look at their appearances in the Crown Tundra, something doesn't quite add up. Unlike the other legendaries who were shoved into the Max Lair, these four are found wandering in the overworld, looking entirely at home in the frozen landscape, as if they were native to the region. And after enough research, I now believe that these three were originally emissaries from the kingdom that ruled Galar in times of yore, during the time where Calyrex reigned supreme. In the Crown Tundra, Peony's daughter, is responsible for the Max Lair, which, again, is the place where all the explicitly foreign legendaries are found. She treats them like anomalies found within the Dynamax adventures. But the Swords of Justice, well, Peony doesn't care about them, and instead they are investigated by Professor Sonia, the leading authority on Galarian history. The game mechanics literally separate them. You track the four swords by finding their footprints in the mud and snow. You literally track them like actual living animals migrating through an ecosystem. Meanwhile, the other legends are for some reason found within the Max Lair, which can only mean that the game designers themselves must have categorized the Swords of Justice as local wildlife to be researched by a professor, rather than anomalies found in the Max Lair's inner depths. We have also seen another group of legendary Pokemon from a whole nother region appear in the Crown Tundra as roaming Pokemon as well. The three elemental birds of Kanto. However, there is one key detail that differentiates them from the Swords of Justice. When Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres migrated to Galar, the environment drastically altered their biology, resulting in them obtaining their Galarian regional forms instead. But the Swords of Justice didn't receive the same treatment, which suggests that the Unovan protectors we know are actually quite comfortably living in their original biological state right here in the Galar region. On top of that, we actually have a precedent to this reverse migration logic I just presented. Take a look at the Zigzagoon line. Its Pokédex entry tells us that the Zigzagoon we see in the Hoenn region, the one we commonly know, are in fact adaptations from the Galarian forms, which all in all means that the ones we find in Galar are the original species. And if that were to be the case for the Swords of Justice, well, then these Pokemon must have traveled to Unova from Galar a pretty long time ago. Now then, I'll explain how these four tie into Calyrex's lore in just a second, but for now, I'd like to discuss with you another idea, and it revolves around the gaps in Unova's mythology. Originally, the myth about the Swords of Justice in Unova goes as follows. In the past, a war between humans caused a massive forest fire. The trio of Cobalion, Virizion and Terrakion then appeared, saving wild Pokemon from the flames. During this, they found a lone Keldeo amidst the fire, and then they decided to take it in as their own, whereafter they vanished into legend. You know what I find rather interesting about this myth? The only Pokemon whose origin is clearly stated is Keldeo. It was an orphan found in the ashes, but for the main trio, their Pokédex entries, the most up-to-date recordings of these Pokemon, can't even clearly identify where they came from. Take Terrakions, for example. This Pokemon came to the defense of Pokemon that had lost their homes in a war among humans. It says came to the defense, which implies what, dear viewer? Correct, it indicates that this Pokemon arrived from elsewhere, which makes sense, especially when you take into consideration that they lack any historical tie to the region's land or its people. But before I show you exactly why this piece of information was so important, I would like to tell you about this video's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev allows you to learn about backend web development through project-based learning. These coding projects are divided into two different categories: guided ones and ones that are specifically designed to put onto your job portfolio, because that's what their goal is, to prepare you for what you'll actually need. Here, let me show you. As you can see, I'm currently making my way through their Golang course, in order to later work on their guided build your own Pokédex project. But let's say you get stuck on a problem. What then? Well, here on Boot.dev, you can join a community of over 65,000 coders, easily review the way their instructors wrote the code, or you can even ask the bear named Boots. Boots is trained on all of their available courses, which means he'll have no trouble helping you with anything that you might be stuck on. Boots is also built in a way where he will not directly give you the answer, and instead he'll slowly push you towards the right direction in order for you to solve it yourself. Oh, and before I forget, all of their content is free to read and watch, and the membership unlocks interactive features like XP, coding projects, and community boss fights. If you're still unsure about it, then you can try all of their projects for free. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, and when you combine that with my code, MaceDragon, you also get 25% off of your first annual subscription. Now let's take a look at the aesthetics. The Unova region is defined by modernization, industry, and urban sprawl. It is the region of bridges, subways, and construction. Galar, however, is steeped in Arturian legend, royalty, and knighthood. It is the region of the sword and shield. I mean, even the legendaries follow this motive. But not only that, we also have Surf-Edged, a new Galarian evolution which fights with a lance, Corvan Knights, which serve as aerial taxis, and the most obvious clue, a never-ending amount of castles found all over the region. Now take a look at the Swords of Justice. First off, the name, Swords of Justice. Yeah, I know that one's obvious. But anyway, these four are also based on the Three Musketeers, and they even possess the Justified ability. Their signature move, again, is themed around the Galar region motives as well, that being Sacred Sword. So if you ask yourself whether or not a quartet of sword-wielding, honor-bound knights make more sense originating from the industrializing and ever-changing Unova region, or from the foggy medieval landscapes of Galar, serving a king alongside Zacian and Zamazenta, then I'd say it's a much higher chance to be the latter. They fit the artistic and cultural shape of Galar far better than they ever fit Unova. Now then, here's another question to you. Where have we seen this specific narrative of forgotten savior before? Well, if you'd like to know the answer to that, then please direct your eyes to the main legend of the Crown Tundra, Calyrex. Back in times of yore, Calyrex ruled over all of the Galar region, where it was known as the benevolent king of bountiful harvests. It healed the land, turned the frozen tundra into lush soil, and saved the people from the ruffian specter steeds. The villagers even built the Crown Shrine to give Calyrex a worthy home as well as a place of worship. However, as time went by, people began to slowly forget about Calyrex, and in the end, Galar's old king faded into legend and fairy tales, forgotten by the very humans it saved, which in turn also made it lose the majority of its powers. Do you see the parallel between the two myths? The Swords of Justice's legend mentions that they disappeared because they distrusted humans, and then Calyrex faded away because humans lost faith in it. Both represent Pokemon who served a greater good, only to be erased from human memory or displaced by human history. And history, especially in Pokemon's world, is written by humans. Which explains why the Unovan twin heroes and the original dragon are remembered, while the Swords of Justice are treated as myths with no home. It's because they only protected wild Pokemon. And speaking of homes, let's look at the environmental storytelling as well. In Pokemon Black and White, the swords are found in specific locations: Rumination Field, the Trial Chamber, and the Guidance Chamber. But look at what happens in the sequels of Pokemon Black and White 2. The Victory Road collapses, leaving Terrakion homeless, and even Virizian's forest is taken over by Pokemon Ranger. They are forced away from their original locations onto routes 11, 13, and 22 respectively. In Unova, their supposed home, the world literally rejects them or falls apart around them. But in the Crown Tundra, they appear as natural wandering legendaries instead. Nothing in Galar seems to reject their presence. Cobalion is found at the Frigid Sea, fitting for the Iron Will Pokemon. Virizion is found in the Giant's Bed, which aligns with its title of the Grassland Pokemon, and then Terrakion is found in the Lakeside Cavern, which, as you might have guessed, fits perfectly with its title of Cavern Pokemon. So, all in all, these three Pokemon, suspiciously enough, have perfect environments for themselves found within the Crown Tundra, a singular subregion found within Galar. Before I pull everything together here and give you a final rundown of their new myth and what exactly happened to the four, here's another fun detail that furthers their Galarian heritage, and it involves Keldeo. In the Crown Tundra, simply finding Keldeo isn't enough. To make it appear, you have to go to a specific island, find a cooking pot, and then do one thing: cook curry. Why curry though? Well, as we know from Sword and Shield, curry is the culturally specific signature dish of the Galar region. It is ingrained in their culture. So if Keldeo was truly raised by three Unovan Pokemon, then why would the smell of a Galarian dish be the only thing that lures it out of hiding? I say it rather suggests that curry is a comfort food. The Swords of Justice who raised Keldeo likely also raised it on the food they were used to eating. They didn't raise Keldeo on things like Castelia cones, they raised wasted on curry. Now then, I'd like for you to take everything I've spoken about so far and then think about the following. How would their story change if we recontextualize their role? What if, long ago, the wise King Calyrex saw the unrest brewing in the Unova region? What if he sent his most trusted knights, the Swords of Justice, across the ocean as emissaries? Their goal was likely to foster an alliance with the Unovan twin heroes, to share the wisdom of the then flourishing Galar region and create a lasting peace between the two kingdoms. I mean, Pokemon such as Galarian Darmanitan and Galarian Stunfisk show that, at the very least, there was an exchange of Pokemon between the two regions quite some time ago. Otherwise, these two wouldn't look so different to its original species nowadays. However, as the Swords of Justice sought to fulfill their missions of creating peace between the two kingdoms, the communication was cut. Calyrex lost its powers and thus faded into myth, leaving the Swords of Justice stranded in a foreign land, their diplomatic mission now a failure. And you know, this also solves the biggest mystery of all. Why didn't they choose to stop N or Ghetsis? Think about it. The War of Truth and Ideals, the conflict in Black and White, both of these were conflicts between humans. If the Swords of Justice were originally diplomats sent to bridge the gaps between kingdoms, the moment that mission failed, they likely abandoned human politics entirely, which in the end explains why they didn't intervene in the philosophical battle of the twin heroes. It wasn't their war. They were just trying to hold the line for a king who was no longer watching them. And then later, when Calyrex regained his powers due to our actions in Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Swords of Justice regained this connection, which made them swiftly return overseas back to their home in the Crown Tundra. That's everything I've got for this video, but if you'd like to see more, then consider subscribing to the channel. I usually upload every 2 weeks or so. It's actually mostly based on how fast I get these theories fully written down. Once again though, thank you to boot.dev for sponsoring this video.